guys, Sebastian here from Wildgrace Vintage. Welcome to our gallery. In today's video, we'll be demoing the brand new Two-Rock Vintage Deluxe. These amplifiers are a love letter to the Fender circuits built in the early 60s, specifically the brown face and black face Deluxes. And I gotta say that you can really hear the passion, the tone, the build quality. These amps are just outstanding, and it's something new for Two-Rock really, because normally they're associated with more modern sounds. Think of that big continuum John Mayer clean sound, and this is something very different. It feels much more vintage and spongier, and it's a sound that we're all familiar with, yet we haven't seen it in a platform like this. So I'm very excited to be demoing this. Let's go ahead and dive in and talk about the specifics. So they're built around a one-channel design that has a few features to give you a bit more flexibility. But the first thing you see when you come in is the gain control, which gives you a wide palette of gain, but it's not really heavy. It's a distortion that it's very vintage sounding, for lack of a better term, not as compressed, very open. Then you have a texture switch, which is something new in these amplifiers that Two-Rock has never offered before. And what it does is that it changes the feel. It's something that is kind of hard to capture in camera, but what it does is that in the lower position, it feels more like a vintage amp. It's a bit more spongy. You have more compression. You know, it's something that you don't get a transient that is so hard, and the attack really gets sucked in a little bit. And in the upper position, it's something that we're more familiar with other Two-Rocks, which is that sound that has a bit more attack, more spank. Then you have a bright switch as well as a 3-band EQ. You have a tube-driven tremolo with speed and intensity. This is a biased tremolo, so it works by alternating the current between the power tubes, and it's a sound that is, again, is very characteristic from those early Fender amplifiers from the 60s. Then the tone stack switch is one of my favorite things about these amps. Basically what that does is that it switches over to an alternate tone stack, which you can control from the back, and the sound of that tone stack is very different. It has a bit more gain, it cuts the bass, and it feels, or it sounds to me like Two-Rock wanted to do almost like a lead boost circuit in a way. And that's exactly what it does. You're not switching channels, but the difference in sound just makes it feel a lot nicer when you're soloing. The lack of bass gives you more of a fluid feel. It doesn't sound muddy at all. You have a bit more gain and volume, and then you have a wide range. You can go from like a super dark and woolly sound to like bright and snappy and gainy, and I love it. It pairs up really well. You can also foot switch that, by the way, as well as the tremolo circuit. Then you have a reverb control, which in the front panel you have a mix, and in the back there is a dwell, which is just to control how much reverb you're getting in your signal and how intense that effect is. Then finally you have a master control and a presence, very self-explanatory. These amps come in two different versions. This one here is a 40-watt version, which comes with 4 6V6 power tubes and a solid-state rectifier. It also offers the option for you to switch back and forth between 40 watts and 20 watts. And 20 watts is really cool because that's the original wattage of the original Deluxes, 22 if I'm correct. And what it allows you to do is just for you to dial the power section of the amp and get power distortion, which is something that is not very common in Two-Rocks. These amps come from the school of Dumble, of basically just getting all of the distortion from the preamp section and having a power section that is as clean as possible. However, the Vintage Deluxe is not that. You know, it's more like a vintage amp. You can really get distortion out of the power section if you dime the master at 20 watts. But it's still a very efficient, sounding amplifier in the sense that you really have to push it to break up, and at 20 watts it's still really loud. I would say louder than a traditional Deluxe for sure. Then moving on to the other amp, which is, again, it's still a Vintage Deluxe. The difference comes in the power section. It is equipped with 2 6L6s and a tube-driven rectifier. You also have two modes. One of them is a fixed bias and the other one is a cathode bias. What the fixed bias does, think of it as more of a compressed or linear sound, not as much transient, very clean and present. And then the cathode bias reduces some of the headroom and it gives you a bit more touch sensitivity. So a lot of these amps have to do with the feel and the way they respond to your playing, which is something that is kind of hard to capture on camera. So definitely if you get the chance to play one of these in person, take it, because it's definitely an experience. But yeah, they sound amazing. They come in a variety of different finishes. Here we have it in Dogwood with this really nice Oxblood grill cloth. And this is Suede, by the way, which Two-Rock does it really, really well. They come in different cabinets. As you can see here, this one is it's a 3 10-inch speaker cabinet. You also have the option of getting a 112 and a 115 to match along with it. So let's go ahead and play for a bit. we'll be using this original 1958 Stratocaster, which is a killer guitar. I mean, it feels and sounds incredible, and it's a really good match for this amp, as well as this 1956 Gibson Les Paul Special in TV Yellow. These amps are very special in the sense that you get that great vintage sound that, you know, a lot of players seek nowadays in a modern format. You have the reliability from Two-Rock, you know, the fact that you have a master volume, that you have the ability to switch different tone stacks to get a lead sound. It makes you a lot more dependable on the amp, not as much on pedals, and it really makes you want to explore all the sounds that these amps have. I love them, I couldn't be happier, and honestly, Two-Rock, congrats, you guys have killed it with this. It sounds awesome. So let's play for a bit so you guys can hear it. Alright guys, thank you for watching this video. If you guys want to pick up any of the gear you steer, the links will be down below in the description. If you want to support the channel, give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and if you want to know more about us, visit our website, wildgracevintage.com. We have vintage guitars, vintage cars, coffee, and now even watches. If you want more content like this, follow us on Instagram at @wildgracevintage. My name is Sebastian. Till next time.